In the quiet town of Tarsus, Alaric felt like an outsider. Each day brought new bullying from his classmates, deepening his sense of loneliness. One day, he found himself in his grandfather's old library, where stories of powerful elementals sparked a small light of hope in him. After a painful encounter with his bullies, Alaric wandered into the forest for comfort. There, he stumbled upon an ancient tomb and accidentally activated a magical artifact, awakening hidden powers that would change his life forever. In the small town of Tarsus, Alaric woke up to another dreary day. The sun peeked through the curtains, but it did little to brighten his mood. He trudged through the streets, his heart heavy with the weight of loneliness. At school, laughter echoed in the hallways, but it was never directed at him. Instead, Alaric often found himself the target of cruel jokes and taunts. His classmates, like shadows, loomed over him, whispering words that cut deeper than any blade. "Look at the loser," one boy sneered, his friends snickering behind him. Alaric kept his head down, wishing he could disappear into the ground. Why did they always choose him? What was wrong with him? These questions echoed in his mind as he hurried to his next class, the sting of their words following him like a dark cloud. After school, Alaric sought refuge in the one place that felt like home, the ancient library that belonged to his grandfather. The air was thick with the scent of old books, and the dim light seemed to wrap around him like a warm embrace. He wandered through the aisles, fingers trailing over the dusty spines of forgotten tales. His grandfather often spoke of the elementals, powerful beings tied to the forces of nature. Alaric loved those stories, even if they felt like dreams far beyond his reach. "Perhaps today, I will find something extraordinary," he whispered to himself, hope flickering faintly in his chest. As he pulled a heavy tome from the shelf, its pages whispered secrets of the past. The words danced before his eyes, speaking of fire, water, earth, and air. For a moment, the weight of his reality lifted, and a spark of possibility ignited within him. But reality crashed back down after a particularly humiliating day. Alaric had been shoved into a row of lockers, the laughter of his peers ringing in his ears. He ran, legs pumping, until he found himself at the edge of the forest, seeking solace among the trees. The forest was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos of his life. As he walked deeper, he felt the cool breeze on his face and the soft crunch of leaves beneath his feet. Then, he stumbled upon something unexpected, an ancient tomb, half hidden by vines and roots. Curiosity pulled him closer, and without thinking, he reached out to touch the weathered stone. The moment his fingers brushed its surface, a surge of energy coursed through him, unlike anything he had ever felt. The ground trembled slightly, and the air crackled with magic. Alaric gasped as a brilliant light enveloped him, revealing symbols that glowed like stars in the darkness. "What is happening?" he breathed, fear mingling with exhilaration. He realized he had unlocked something powerful, something that could change everything. The feeling of isolation began to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose. As the light dimmed, Alaric stood there, breathless, heart racing. He could feel a warmth spreading through him, a connection to the very elements he had read about. It was as if the stories had come to life, and he was no longer just a boy in Tarsus. He was something more. "What have I done?" he asked, the weight of uncertainty creeping back in. But deep down, a voice whispered that this was his moment, a turning point that could alter his fate forever. With newfound resolve, Alaric stepped back from the tomb, the forest around him buzzing with energy. The path ahead was unclear, but for the first time, he felt a flicker of hope. What would this power mean for him? Would he be able to change his life? The questions swirled in his mind, but the answers lay just beyond his grasp. All he knew was that he was ready to find out. Alaric sat on the edge of a fallen log, his heart racing as he stared at his hands. The power that had awakened within him felt both thrilling and terrifying. He could still remember the moment when he had activated the magical artifact in the tomb. It was as if a storm had erupted inside him. Now, he grappled with a heavy decision. Should he use his newfound abilities to seek revenge on those who bullied him, or should he protect those who could not defend themselves? As he wrestled with these thoughts, memories of his childhood flooded his mind. He recalled the sharp laughter of his peers, the harsh words that cut deeper than any blade. "You'll never be anything, Alaric," they would say. "You're just a loser." Each taunt replayed like a broken record, deepening his feelings of isolation. He clenched his fists, feeling anger rise within him. Suddenly, a voice broke through his thoughts. "You look lost," a girl said softly. Alaric turned to see a brave-looking girl with fiery red hair and bright green eyes. She stepped closer, her expression curious yet kind. "I'm Seraphine. What's bothering you?" Alaric hesitated. He did not want to share his struggles, but something about her presence made him feel safe. I just found out I have these powers," he admitted, "and now I don't know what to do with them." Seraphine nodded, her face serious. "I understand. I've faced my own struggles. There was a time when I felt powerless too." Her honesty surprised him. People can be cruel, but we can't let that define us. We have to choose who we want to be. Alaric looked at her, intrigued. "How did you get through it?" "I learned that strength isn't just about power. It's about how we treat others," she replied. "You can use your powers to help, not just to hurt. It's a choice we all have to make." As they talked, Alaric felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps there was a way to use his abilities that didn't involve revenge, but the darkness inside him still whispered, tempting him to give in to anger. Days turned into weeks, and Alaric spent more time with Seraphine. She became a guiding light in his life, teaching him how to control his powers. They practiced together in the forest, where the trees seemed to listen to their laughter and shared dreams. Seraphine taught him to focus, to channel his energy into something positive. "Try to feel the energy around you," she instructed one day, standing beside him with her arms raised. "Close your eyes and let it flow through you." Alaric closed his eyes, feeling the cool breeze brush his skin. He concentrated, feeling the warmth of the earth beneath him. Slowly, he began to sense the energy of the forest, a vibrant pulse that matched his heartbeat. "I can feel it," he exclaimed, opening his eyes wide. "Good. Now, let's see if you can create something," Seraphine encouraged, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Focus on the energy and imagine it taking shape." With a deep breath, Alaric visualized a small flame flickering in his palm. He concentrated hard, and to his amazement, a tiny flame appeared, dancing like a firefly. "I did it!" he shouted, exhilarated. Seraphine clapped her hands, her smile brightening the forest. "Yes, you're getting stronger every day." But as Alaric grew in strength, the shadows of doubt still loomed over him. He often found himself thinking back to his bullies. What if they came after him again? What if he lost control of his powers? One evening, as they sat by a small fire, Alaric shared his fears. "What if I become like them? What if I hurt someone?" His voice trembled with uncertainty. Seraphine placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You won't. You have a choice. You can choose to be better than they were. Remember, it's okay to feel scared. What matters is how you respond to that fear." Alaric looked into her eyes, feeling the warmth of her words. He knew he had much to learn, but he could see a path ahead, a path where he could be a protector rather than a destroyer. In that moment, he felt a spark of determination ignite within him. With Seraphine's guidance, Alaric began to embrace his powers, not as a weapon, but as a means to protect. He realized that true strength lay in compassion and understanding, not in revenge. And as he walked this new path, he felt less alone, knowing that he had a friend by his side who believed in him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Alaric, Seraphine, and Kale sat together on a moss-covered rock at the edge of the forest. They had spent the day exploring the hidden paths, sharing stories and laughter, but now a serious tone hung in the air. "I can't keep running away from my past," Alaric said, his voice heavy with uncertainty. "Every time I think I'm free, they find me again." Seraphine placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You are stronger than you think, Alaric. We are here for you. You don't have to face them alone." Kale, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. "I understand what you mean. Being a prince is not as easy as it looks. Everyone expects me to be brave, but I feel so lost sometimes." He looked at both of them, his eyes filled with vulnerability. "What if I fail to protect you?" Alaric shook his head. "It's not about being perfect. It's about trying. We can face them together." The three friends shared a moment of silence, each lost in their thoughts. They had all faced their own battles, and though they had become close, the weight of their pasts still lingered. Suddenly, a rustling sound broke the quiet. Alaric's heart raced as he turned to see familiar figures emerge from the shadows. His former bullies, the very ones who had tormented him for years, stood before them. Their laughter echoed in the air, cold and mocking. "Well, well, look who we have here," sneered one of the bullies, a tall boy named Rylan. "The little elemental and his friends. What are you going to do now? Cry?" Alaric felt anger rise within him, but he took a deep breath. He remembered his promise to protect, not to hurt. "You don't scare me anymore, Rylan," he said, trying to sound stronger than he felt. "Oh, really?" Rylan stepped closer, a smirk on his face. "What can you do? You're still just a nobody." Kale stepped forward, his chest puffed out. "You should leave. We don't want any trouble." Rylan laughed, and his friends joined in. "What are you going to do? Threaten us with your royal title? Or maybe your little powers?" He gestured dismissively, clearly underestimating them. Seraphine, sensing the tension, whispered to Alaric, "Remember what we talked about. Don't let them get to you." Alaric nodded, feeling the warmth of her encouragement. "We won't fight you, but if you want to pick on someone, you'll have to go through all of us." Rylan's expression shifted slightly, surprise flickering in his eyes. "So, you think you're brave now? Just wait until we tell everyone what a coward you really are." "Go ahead, I don't care what you say anymore," Alaric replied, his voice steady. "You can't hurt me like you used to." The tension in the air crackled like electricity, and for a moment, it felt as if time had stopped. Alaric's heart pounded in his chest, but he stood firm, surrounded by his friends. They were ready to face whatever came next. Rylan, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, hesitated. "You think you're tough? This isn't over." He spat before turning away, his friends following closely behind. As they disappeared into the woods, a sense of relief washed over Alaric. He had stood up for himself, choosing to protect rather than retaliate. It was a significant moment for him, one that marked a turning point in his journey. Kale clapped Alaric on the back. "You did well. I'm proud of you, Alaric." Seraphine smiled brightly. "You showed them your strength without losing yourself. That's what true power is." Alaric felt a warmth spread through him, a feeling he had not experienced in a long time. "Thank you, both of you. I couldn't have done it without you." As night fell, the trio sat together, their bond growing stronger. They shared their fears, their dreams, and the hope that they could face whatever challenges lay ahead as true allies. In that moment, Alaric understood that he was no longer alone. Together, they could conquer their pasts and embrace the future. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees, Alaric and his friends gathered in their usual clearing. The air was thick with tension, and the weight of their mission loomed over them. Alaric could feel the unease in his chest, a constant reminder of the dark forces they were about to face. "We need to be ready for anything," Kyle said, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying his worry. He looked at Alaric, who was staring into the distance, lost in thought. "You know they're not going to back down." Alaric nodded slowly. "I know, but it's hard to shake off the fear. What if they find a way to control my powers?" His hands clenched into fists, the spark of energy tingling at his fingertips. The thought of losing control scared him more than facing his former bullies. Seraphine stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're stronger than you think, Alaric. Remember how far you've come. We won't let them take your power away." Her voice was calm, but Alaric could see the determination in her eyes. "Right," Kyle added, attempting a smile. "We'll train together. We can't let them use our powers for their plans. We have to fight back." As they began their training, Alaric felt a flicker of hope. They practiced their skills, each session bringing them closer together. Seraphine focused on her agility, moving smoothly through the trees, while Kale worked on channeling his own elemental strength. Alaric, meanwhile, struggled with controlling his powers, often feeling the pull of darkness whispering in his ear. One afternoon, as they took a break, Alaric sat on a fallen log, watching his friends. "What do you think will happen when we confront them?" he asked, fear creeping into his voice. "We'll face them together," Seraphine replied, her tone firm. "We have each other's backs. That's what matters." Kale added, "And if we stick to our plan, we can outsmart them. We just need to trust in our abilities and in each other." Alaric breathed deeply, trying to calm his racing heart. But the shadows of doubt lingered. What if he wasn't strong enough? What if the darkness inside him took over? That night, as they camped under the stars, Alaric couldn't sleep. He stared at the flickering fire, lost in thought. Seraphine noticed and moved closer, her expression softening. "Alaric, what's bothering you?" "I just keep thinking about what they want," he confessed. "They want to use my powers. I can't let that happen. But what if I can't control it? What if I hurt someone?" Seraphine shook her head. "You won't. You have us. And remember, your powers are a part of you, but they don't define you. You have a choice. You can choose to be a protector." Alaric looked into her eyes, finding comfort in her words. "But what if I give in to the darkness?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Kale, who had been listening, chimed in. "We all have darkness within us, but it's how we choose to fight it that matters. You're not alone in this, Alaric. We'll face it together. You've already shown incredible strength. Don't forget that." With their encouragement, Alaric felt a flicker of determination spark inside him. He might be afraid, but he knew he could rely on his friends. They were his strength. As dawn broke the next day, they prepared for their final training before facing their rivals. The air buzzed with energy, and Alaric felt a sense of purpose surging within him. "Let's do this," he said, standing tall. "We're stronger together, and we will not let them win." His friends nodded, a unified front ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The shadows may have been dark, but together they would shine brighter. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the battlefield where Alaric, Seraphine, and Kale stood. Tension filled the air as they faced Alaric's former rival, Magnus, who commanded a group of dark figures. The ground trembled beneath them, mirroring the storm brewing within Alaric's heart. "Are you ready for this?" Kale asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. He tightened his grip on the sword his father had given him, a symbol of his royal lineage. Alaric nodded, though doubt lingered in his mind. "I have to be. For Tarsus, and for us." He glanced at Seraphine, who stood tall, her fiery spirit glowing in her determined gaze. "Remember, Alaric," Seraphine said, her voice calm yet firm. "We fight for each other, not for revenge. You are stronger than you think." Her words echoed in his mind as Magnus stepped forward, a smirk playing on his lips. "You think you can stop me, Alaric? You are nothing but a scared boy hiding behind his friends." Anger flared in Alaric's chest. Memories of the bullying he endured flooded back, but he took a deep breath, focusing on the present. "I am not afraid of you, Magnus. This time, I choose how I fight." Magnus laughed, a harsh sound that cut through the tension. "Choose wisely then. Let's see if your so-called strength is real." With a wave of his hand, the shadows around him surged forward, dark tendrils reaching for Alaric and his friends. "Now!" Seraphine shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos. The trio moved in unison, their training kicking in. Alaric summoned the elemental powers within him, feeling the warmth of fire and the coolness of water intertwining around him. As the shadows closed in, Alaric focused, channeling his energy. "Flame of the earth, shield us," he cried, and a barrier of swirling fire erupted around them, pushing the dark tendrils back. "Good job, Alaric," Kale cheered, his own sword glowing with a bluish light as he slashed at the shadows. "Keep it up." But doubt crept in again. What if he couldn't hold the barrier? What if he failed? The weight of the moment pressed heavily on his shoulders. He could feel Magnus's eyes on him, waiting for him to falter. "Alaric," Seraphine called, pulling him from his spiraling thoughts. "Focus. Remember why we fight. Not for revenge, but for each other." The reminder struck a chord deep within him. He could not let his past define him. He had the power to make a choice. As the shadows lunged again, he steadied himself. "I choose to protect." With renewed strength, he pushed the barrier outward, engulfing the shadows in flames. The dark figures writhed and hissed, their forms dissipating into smoke. Alaric felt a surge of energy, a connection to the elemental forces that flowed through him. Magnus's expression shifted from confidence to fear. "No, this is not how it's supposed to end." He raised his hands, summoning a dark vortex, but Alaric was ready. "Together!" Alaric shouted to his friends, and they formed a circle around him. Seraphine and Kale joined their powers with his. Light and fire mixed with water and air, creating a brilliant explosion of energy that shot toward Magnus. "No!" Magnus screamed as the light engulfed him, the darkness around him collapsing under the sheer force of their combined powers. The ground shook violently, and for a moment, Alaric felt as if time stood still. Then, silence fell. The vortex vanished, and Magnus was gone. The battlefield was quiet, save for the heavy breaths of Alaric and his friends. They stood together, shaken, but unbroken. Did we win?" Kyle asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alaric looked around, the weight of his choice settling upon him. "Yes, but it was not just about winning. It was about who we chose to be." He turned to Seraphine and Kale, gratitude shining in his eyes. "I could not have done this without you." Seraphine smiled, her spirit unyielding. "We did this together, Alaric. You chose redemption, and that makes you a hero." As they stood amidst the remnants of the battle, Alaric felt a transformation within himself. He had faced his fears, made his choice, and emerged stronger. The path ahead was still unknown, but with his friends by his side, he felt ready to embrace whatever came next. The sun rose slowly over Tarsus, casting a warm glow on the remnants of the battlefield. Alaric stood at the edge of the clearing, his heart still racing from the fight. The air was thick with the scent of burnt earth, and the echoes of battle faded into a distant memory. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions inside him. "Alaric, are you okay?" Seraphine's voice cut through his thoughts. She approached him cautiously, her eyes filled with concern. Alaric turned to face her, the weight of his recent decisions hanging heavy on his shoulders. I think so," Alaric replied, his voice shaky. "But I feel different. I feel like I've lost something and gained something at the same time." Kale joined them, his brow furrowed as he looked between them. It's normal to feel that way after what we just went through. You did something incredible out there. You chose to protect instead of seeking revenge. Alaric nodded, the memory of the battle flooding back. He had faced his rival, the one who had tormented him for so long, and instead of letting anger take control, he had chosen mercy. But I still feel angry sometimes, Alaric admitted. What they did to me, it hurts so much. Seraphine stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. It's okay to feel that way. You went through a lot, but we can't let our past define us. We have to move forward. Her words hung in the air, and Alaric felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she was right. Maybe he could let go of the pain and embrace something new. How do I do that? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Kyle took a deep breath, his expression serious. You start by forgiving, not just them, but yourself too. You have to let go of the anger and make space for healing. Alaric considered this. Forgiveness felt like a heavy weight, but he wanted to try. I'll try, he said finally. I'll try to forgive them. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the three friends made their way back to the village. The streets were quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just faced. When they reached the town square, Alaric noticed people gathering, whispering and pointing at him. Look! It's the last elemental! Someone shouted, and the crowd parted as they approached. Alaric felt a mix of pride and uncertainty wash over him. He had fought for them, but he had also fought against his own fears. Alaric! A familiar voice called out. It was his mother, her eyes wide with relief as she rushed toward him. Thank the stars you're safe! She enveloped him in a tight hug, and Alaric felt a warmth spread through him. He had been so lost, but now he felt found. I'm okay, Mom, he reassured her, glancing at Seraphine and Kale, who stood watching with smiles on their faces. You were amazing, Alaric, Seraphine said, her eyes sparkling. You showed everyone what true strength looks like. Alaric blushed at her praise, but felt a swell of confidence. I couldn't have done it without you two, he replied genuinely. You helped me find my way. Later that day, they found themselves sitting on a grassy hill overlooking Tarsus. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Alaric felt a sense of peace settle over him. Do you think we can protect this place? Kale asked, breaking the comfortable silence. I mean, with everything that has happened? Absolutely, Alaric said, his voice filled with determination. We'll protect it together. We're stronger as a team. Seraphine nodded enthusiastically. And we'll learn from our past. We won't let it hold us back. As they watched the sun dip below the horizon, Alaric felt a new sense of purpose fill his heart. He was no longer just a boy who had been bullied. He was Alaric, the last elemental, and he was ready to embrace his future. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united by their bond and their commitment to protect the world they loved. Share this story if you believe that forgiveness and friendship can conquer even the toughest battles. Leave a comment about a time when you chose to embrace hope over anger, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales like this one.